Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. We're here today to talk about ConstructZero, which is, and the CLC is launching its ConstructZero performance framework. So that's the real focus of today. I will just say that back in April this year, I spoke to Hannah on this call and another CLC representative, and it was very early stages of all of this, of the framework, talking around the framework. So today it's a great pleasure to say that we can give you much more detail behind what's happened during the consultation and where the CLC wants to take things. So thank you very much, all of our speakers. I'm going to go through what's happening today. So first of all, we're running over an hour and a half. Do stick with us because we'll have a Q&A at the last part of the section. So all the way through, please post your questions. I'll be looking out for questions to put to the panel, and we'll do that in the last part of it. But before then, you're going to hear from the Construction Minister, Anne-Marie Trevelyan MP. She's going to give some thoughts and reflections for the industry on a pre-recorded message for the industry. So we have got that to look forward to. Then we also have industry reflections from Andy Mitchell, the co-chair of the CLC, and he's going to be talking about the findings of the consultation on the performance framework and talking around the creation of the performance framework and how the industry can use the framework to measure its impact and understand when and where further action needs to be taken. We also have on the call Andrew Griffith MP, who is the Prime Minister's net zero champion, and he's going to talk around the importance of the sector meeting the 2035 net zero challenge. So welcome both to them. They will give their initial thoughts. And we also have Hannah Vickers, who I mentioned before, who I know has worked in great detail on this framework, and so can explain some of the goals behind it and how we got to this point. And we've got Stuart Young from Bays, who's very heavily involved in stakeholder engagement, and I know is probably talking to a lot of the individual firms who are on the call with us, and is keen to get you all very involved. So and then, as if that wasn't enough, we're also going to hear from the next round of ConstructZero business champions. So we've got, not everybody is on the call right from the start. We are having a couple of technical problems with Richard Batley of Saint-Gobain, but hopefully he will join us soon. We also have Mark Crouch of Mock McDonald. We have Kath Fontana of Mighty. We've got John Logan from McLaughlin and Harvey. And so they'll be talking around their company's experiences, what it's taken to be a net zero champion, and any lessons that they've got to share with you guys. So please do post questions for them if something interesting comes up that affects you. And we also have on the call David Partridge, and he's going to also be involved in the Q&A. So welcome to him. And I should just say he's from Argent as well. Sorry, I lost my notes there. We've got a lot of callers on today, a lot of speakers on today. So thank you very much for joining us. So firstly, we've got a bit of a teaser interview, which I know the CLC is quite excited about. They've developed it with ITN, and it's got a general message. I think this is fair to say it's part of CLC's communications push, and it's all about greener Britain. So it's building a greener Britain, and it's around raising awareness. So I'm just going to give a prompt to my colleague to play that, and hopefully everybody will be able to see that on their screens in a moment.
Climate change is the greatest challenge of our generation. There is a loud shout from society and business to change the way in which we all live and work. At the heart of this mission is the UK government, with their pledge to reduce emissions to net zero by 2050. UK construction has a major role to play. From the local builder in our communities to major global corporate brands, everyone has a role.
You want to survive right now, you've got to be on this journey.
The impact of change not happening will be catastrophic.
It's a really exciting time to be in the construction industry.
We're going to have to think differently. And for many of us, it reinforces why we became engineers in the first place, to make the world a better place for tomorrow.
In building a greener Britain, see how the Construction Leadership Council and their champions are leading the way in this urgent mission. Trusted to tell these important stories will be ITN reporters. If you have an exciting story to tell and want to help showcase the great work of this exciting sector, please get in touch.
Now is the time for all of us in the construction sector to work together to overcome our biggest challenge, to build a greener Britain.
Well, thank you for that. I think we can agree that was a powerful video, and obviously the message behind it raises the urgency of the situation around the climate crisis. I would just say, obviously, building covers interesting stories about the building sector all the time. So please do contact us with your interesting net zero stories as well as ITN. No, it's great to see the CLC partnering up with lots of media partners and getting the message out there. So thank you very much. Right, so on to the next part of our agenda. I think we are now moving on to Anne-Marie Trevelyan's video and message to the industry that she's pre-recorded for us. And obviously I should also say she is co-chair of the CLC, so she's talking in both capacities there. So we will switch over to the Construction Minister now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to join you today to launch the CLC's ConstructZero performance framework. As the Construction Minister and the co-chair of the CLC, I've followed the progress of ConstructZero since the idea was first mooted a few months ago. I'm pleased that it has come a long way since then, leading today to the launch of the performance framework. That such progress has been made in such a short space of time is a credit to the leadership of the CLC, the brilliant team behind the ConstructZero initiative, and indeed the whole sector. I commend you all. The context, of course, is climate change, one of the greatest challenges facing us, and the government's commitment to tackling it through reducing the UK's carbon emissions by 78% compared to 1990 levels by 2035, and reaching net zero carbon by 2050. With the built environment accounting for 43% of UK emissions, it goes without saying that the sector has a significant role to play in meeting the net zero challenge. Put simply, without your contribution and engagement, we will not meet the target. That's why I'm delighted that in response to the challenge, the construction sector, through the CLC's leadership, came up with ConstructZero, an industry change programme. The credibility of the sector's response derives from the fact that ConstructZero used the Prime Minister's 10-point plan for Green Industrial Revolution and the Climate Change Committee's 6th carbon budget to establish the 9 priorities that underpin its work, providing a framework for the commitments made by industry to reduce its carbon emissions. So looking at those 9 priorities developed around the 3 categories of transport, buildings and construction activity, I believe they capture the key actions industry needs to take to meet the net zero target. These include commitments to decarbonise the materials the sector uses, adopt zero emissions plant and machinery, improve the way we design and deliver buildings to make these better, more energy and heat efficient, and improve construction operations to achieve zero waste. Of course, successful delivery of the commitments depends on commitment from the industry, which is why it was crucial that the CLC engaged and worked with the industry to develop those commitments. And as we know, only through government and industry working in partnership will we make this work. I know the team behind ConstructZero have engaged far and wide, across and beyond the sector, to develop and refine the commitments, and I'm really grateful for all your support. But while the headline commitments set out the actions that the construction industry should take to reduce its carbon emissions and meet the net zero challenge, it's also important that industry sets out measurable targets and performance criteria to measure the progress against those commitments, hence the performance framework that we're launching today. The performance framework provides the CLC with a sector-level dashboard on progress towards net zero, aimed at enabling businesses to action progress and encourage those outside the sector to take the key steps on the broader journey to net zero. It's important that the sector holds itself to account for the commitments it has made. The performance framework will enable the industry to do this, reporting progress on a quarterly basis, building on existing publicly available data. But as I said earlier, industry commitment is always crucial for success. And in that respect, I'm delighted to see the impressive level of industry's response to the proposed metrics, with over 2,500 comments from firms of all sizes across the sector. I know the ConstructZero team very much welcomed the engagement and have been working intensely with the sector to ensure that these comments reflect, to the extent necessary, your views. However, as the performance framework draws on emerging thinking on carbon measurement and assessment, it does need to evolve and improve over time, therefore responding to the needs of the future workforce and sector. So the framework we are launching today is clearly the starting point, the next step in a conversation that will iterate, change and adapt over time as we move forward collectively to lead our industry into a future that is fit and sustainable for the present and for the future. I'm pleased the CLC will hold us collectively to account on this, reviewing, testing and refining this framework on a quarterly basis. With that said, I'm delighted to launch the ConstructZero Performance Framework and look forward to continuing to work with all of you on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great to have a message from the Construction Minister there, outlining at a sort of top level what the CLC is aiming to do with this performance framework. So to unpack some of that a little bit, I think we're going to go across to Andy Mitchell now for some initial words about the work that's been done at CLC. I'll just invite the other speakers just to turn off their webcams, just so that we can focus on Andy for the moment. Over to you, Andy.
Okay, thank you, Chloe. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm delighted to see nearly 260 people on this call, and I will relay all of our thanks to the Minister for her kind words. So it's, as I say, this is a really exciting day for the ConstructZero Industry Change Programme, and as Anne-Marie said, the level of interest in this subject is clear from the 2,500 plus comments that we've received in response to the consultation, and I think this is unparalleled in this sector from what I've seen. Never before has the industry come together on a single subject at such speed and on such scale, and I think that's because we all recognise the scale of the challenge ahead of us. So today represents the next step in this conversation, and the ConstructZero team have engaged extensively with stakeholders and across the industry to produce the performance framework that we're launching today. But I think it's really important to be clear that yes, we're launching this, but we know that this is just the first step of a journey. We know that this document will change. It will iterate. We need to develop as that conversation with the industry gets more clarity, and as more people get involved. And I even up to a couple of minutes ago, I'm still getting emails coming in saying, well, we haven't had our say on this piece. And for anyone who feels like that, I'll be the first to hold my hand up and say, sorry, we need to talk, because the whole point of what happens now is that we get more people involved, and the measures that we have get richer and more meaningful, and so the journey starts. So, the framework contains a series of headline commitments and underpinning metrics, and these commitments are already set through existing government policy, as the Minister said, and/or regulations. But today, for the first time, they're brought together under one umbrella, and as you can imagine, that's not been an easy feat. They're here for businesses across the sector of all sizes to consider and adopt as they seek to reduce their emissions. Their emissions. We know that this is not a case of one size fits all. And clearly, it's up to companies to decide what suits them best in their situation and on the works that they're doing. I mean, I'd like to stress that these commitments aren't mandatory, of course, but together, as we start monitoring the sector's progress against these headline commitments on a quarterly basis, not that necessarily every measure will be taken every quarter, but on a quarterly basis, we'll do a stock take of where are we. And a big drive for us is that we use existing reporting as much as possible. We're certainly not trying to create a cottage industry in reporting. So the next update will be in October, prior to COP, and I look forward to reading about the progress and seeing how far we've got in that time. And as I said, it's our expectation that by the end of October, we'll have produced at least the first revision to the model and the metrics that we've got, which gives us time between now and then to listen more and make sure that we've got all the things in there that we would wish to have. And I'm sure that won't be the last revision either. So probably enough from me. Thank you, as I say, for being here. Thank you to all of our business champions and partners for your support and the engagement that we've seen with the program to date. It's a huge amount of work that's been achieved in a very short space of time, but only by working together like this in partnership with ConstructZero will we get to the changes that we collectively envisage. So I think it's an exciting day, and it's the first step of an exciting journey. Back to Chloe.
Thank you so much, Andy. Before you nip away, before I go across to Andrew, I just wanted to quickly ask around. You said the next update is due in October. Can I just clarify which update do you mean? Do you mean part of the quarterly reports?
So both actually. The first report, as we've gone through and worked at the metrics and understand where we think we've measured, but also we recognise that some of the metrics themselves may not be right, and we're continuing to have that dialogue. So just wanted to assure people looking at this that if this isn't exactly what you think it should be, this isn't the end. This, as I say, is a start. And I am sure, well, we intend to, by the end of October, produce at least the next revision to the measures. And I don't think the framework will change, but I think the measures could.
Right, okay. I was just making sure we hadn't missed a set of quarterly reports. It will be the next iteration of the measures. Got it. Thank you so much, Andy. Right, we're going to move over to Andrew Griffiths MP, who is also Prime Minister's net zero champion. Have I got the title right there, Andrew?
You have. I'm sorry it's a mouthful, although it's at least clear about the domain.
Wonderful. Okay, well, me and Andy are going to nip off and turn our webcams off, and over to you.
Oh, thank you, Luke. Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, let me echo Minister Trevelyan's, the building minister's, compliments to all of you on the ConstructZero performance framework and the ConstructZero programme. It's a great pleasure to be here, and a great deal that's already been achieved, as well as a great deal that we have to do in the future, a great opportunity. So I'd like to thank the whole team who have been involved in ConstructZero. They conceived, developed, sold in the idea, and also the business champions who are now bringing it to life, applying it to the real world, and the businesses of every size, from the largest to the smallest, who are now engaging in the program. So congratulations on that. We know that as we look to the post-COVID recovery and the great work that's been done throughout the pandemic by the sector, that we're going to need to think longer term about what we're building, how we're building it, and make real fundamental changes in how we plan, design, and deliver new projects. And that applies across the whole of the UK. And ConstructZero is that bold, ambitious idea that seizes this moment and looks at how we can transform the industry. It's very similar to other industry initiatives. We've got Tech Zero, we've got Jet Zero in aviation, and ConstructZero firmly fits as a very, very important part of that firmament. Now, I know that a lot of folk listening will be perhaps worried, have some trepidation. Change is always a challenge. We're meeting against a difficult backdrop. And this is an industry where 90% of businesses are SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. So it's very important, I understand, that there is support, a warm embrace put around those, and that as we come up with new solutions, they are shared evenly and deployed across the whole industry, not just for the very largest firms. And that's something, as Net Zero Business Champion and someone who used to be in business themselves, I am very focused on. I also think there are lots of opportunities in this space, opportunities to get more engagement with our customers, more support from stakeholders, to make businesses more sustainable, and in some domains, such as retrofitting, to establish new businesses and to create whole new opportunities. And if we can do that, then we are showing what I always call the ferocious problem-solving power of business. And there's no better industry, to be honest, than the construction industry in problem-solving. That's what you do every single day. Nothing ever goes quite straightforwardly, and you solve problems. So that, to me, is the brilliant role of the CLC, of ConstructZero initiative, and every one of us has a role to play. So today we come forward with the performance framework. I congratulate everybody on the goals in that. There's a lot of learning for us to do, but you are really, just at the start of that, and you're an incredibly important industry that is at the forefront of my mind, the Prime Minister's mind, ministers' minds, and a very successful, and will continue to be a very successful British industry. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to joining our panel session shortly.
Thank you so much, Andrew. That was great to have some words from you on that, and also I hope in the discussion we can find out a bit more about your role as a Net Zero Business Champion and the involvement that you have with the CLC, because obviously you cross all sorts of sectors, so it'll be really interesting to understand how you're working closely with Andy Mitchell. So I'm just also going to put a shout out to our listeners. Please post your questions. I will pick up on them. So please post your questions to the panel as and when they come to you, and they will be in a queue waiting for me to read. Right, so before we go to our business champions, we're going to have a quick update from Hannah Vickers, who I know has worked extensively on this performance framework. So Hannah, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I think you've got some slides to share.
Thank you, Chloe, and yes, hopefully my slides will be clear. I just want to check you can see those. Can everybody see those? Assuming you can. Okay, I was just going to show you what the performance framework actually looks like. So as of now, all of this is available on the CLC's website, and you will be sent a copy as well after this call. But just so that you get a feel for what we're actually talking about, I'm going to cover a few things. Firstly, how it's been developed. So what we are looking at here is, we're calling it version 1. What we actually did was create version 0 and put it out to an industry consultation over the last 6 to 8 weeks. Coming out of that, we've now got version 1, taking on board a lot of the really good feedback we've got from across the industry, and also being able to give us a bit of a pointer around what are the enablers. So if the performance framework is all around what industry needs to do, what was coming out as common themes around what perhaps government may need to do in terms of funding or tax or legislation, and likewise what we might need to do in terms of research and development. So that's the process that we've been through to develop this. Just going to move us on now. So we touched on this earlier, that actually the sort of cornerstone of the entire ConstructZero programme are these 9 priorities. So these are the thematic areas that we are focusing on in terms of having the biggest impact on net zero carbon across the sector. And whilst all of these won't apply to every business, we hope there's something in here for everyone. So this is the start of your sort of route into this, shall we say. So the structure of the framework, Andy's alluded to this already in his comments, but effectively we've got 3 levels to the framework. We've got the headline commitments, which sit beneath those priorities I've just shown you, and they set out what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, what's the milestone, how will we know when we have made enough progress or we are making good progress. Beneath those headline commitments, we then got the indicators, if you like, the KPIs, the metrics for measurement. And that's all about what is it that we're going to measure that's telling us that we're on track to meet that headline commitment. And that is what we will be reporting at a sector level on a quarterly basis through the CLC. Beneath that, and this is very much more just for guidance at this stage, are what would you be looking at if you were perhaps a business or a project wanting to align your approach to ConstructZero. So what we've done is take our sector level commitments and metrics for measurement and rolled those down to what it might mean for a business or a project. But I will reiterate, those are just for guidance. So as the CLC, we are not measuring those. What we've done is publish them to start to help businesses and projects think about consistency in their approach to net zero and your individual plans for net zero. So I'll just show you the headline commitments now. So we've got our 9 priorities. You can see the first 6 here, and you've got the priority area on the left, and then the sort of outcome statement, the headline commitment on the right. So I'll pick on an example. So we've got the first one, which is all about zero emission vehicles and on-site plants. So actually our sort of measure of success, our outcome measure there is that 78% of diesel plant will be eliminated from construction sites by 2035. Now, we've done these headline commitments to be realistic with what we think we can do. I guess the challenge for all of us is to look at whether we can bring them forward, whether we can actually meet those ahead of the timeframes that we've put on them. But for now, that's what we are comfortable with, and it's for us to check our performance and check ourselves as government policy changes, as the sector's ambitions change, as to whether or not they are actually the right targets and whether we are sort of going far enough, fast enough. But for now, this is what we're putting out there, but we're very keen to hear suggestions and improvements, as Andy mentioned earlier. So there are 9 of them. That's the last 3 at the bottom there relating to construction activity. We do have one single separate measure, which is all about measuring business action very specifically, and this is all about business carbon measurements. You'll see at the bottom there, in addition to our headline measures across the 9 priorities, we will also be measuring the number of businesses who have actually set themselves measurable targets. So we've got a mixture in there of things that are relevant to large businesses and things that are relevant to SMEs, but we will be targeting to make sure we're getting increasing coverage of businesses that we know have set these targets. And in particular, that's where we're looking to the likes of our business champions that we'll hear from later on, who are well on that journey already and are going to be hopefully sharing some of their experiences around how they develop their own net zero plans. So final piece from myself was just to give you an example of the performance framework. So this is just the first 3 priorities, the first 3 sort of headline commitments there you can see in grey, just so that you get to see what I mean by metrics for measurement. So this is effectively what our dashboard is going to look like when we come back to measure it in the autumn. So you can see what we've done here is define in the metrics for measurement the things that we will be physically measuring and looking at a sector level to give us that barometer of whether or not we have we are making any progress, and whether or not there are areas where we perhaps need to pay a bit more attention, a bit more focus as a sector. So I won't go through all of them, but you can see that the detail is there. I would urge you to go and have a look at it. So there are 3 slides on the sector metrics, and then I will just show you what it looks like if you're looking for the equivalent. So this is just, again, the first priority. You can see we've got the sector level metrics on the left, and then for guidance, perhaps more relevant to yourselves if you're thinking about what this means for your projects or your businesses, we've set out some guidance there on what you might want to think about, what you might want to measure. And I will stress that is just for guidance, but we thought it was really helpful to actually play back all of the learning that we've gone through developing the sector level metrics to try and bring about some consistency. So starting to get us to taking a consistent approach and sort of speeding up some of that learning across the sector as well. So I'm going to just pause there. I'm going to now hand over to Stuart Young, who has been working with me closely on the development of the performance framework, and he is going to speak a little bit about the comms and engagement and where we are going and how you can perhaps get a bit more involved in this and the ConstructZero programme more broadly going forward. So Stuart, over to you.
Thanks, Hannah, and hopefully everyone can hear me. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's event. I think the first thing to say, without stating the obvious, is we've come a long way. I particularly wanted to thank Andrew and the Minister for all their help today, and also the members of our advisory board and programme board. So we've come a long way. It started as an idea. It's now gone to a global audience, which is kind of testament to the work of the team. So you won't be surprised to hear there's a dedicated and detailed communications plan underway, and it's taken up. It's quite a heavy program, which is good, and it's getting a lot of traction and interest from across the sector. So one thing I just wanted to touch on first of all is the business champion. So thanks to those who are joining the call today. This is a really exciting part of the program, and it's joined from companies all across the sector who, as has been mentioned already, we're onboarding on a monthly basis. So we're getting kind of traction right from the local SME through to the kind of large scale global corporate companies. And all those companies are really helping us to tell the story in terms of what the industry is already doing and how you can kind of set the standards and kind of bring the rest of the industry on that journey. Also, I'd like to flag, just so you know about, we've got an exciting range of partners on the programme, and those are more kind of representative organisations whose role really is to kind of encourage and support members. So we've got companies such as CBI, we've also got EDF Energy, and we've got other exciting companies in the pipeline who are particularly interested in getting involved with us. So kind of moving forwards now, that's a kind of a snapshot of where we are on the comms side. So going forwards, obviously the kind of the key headline is the COP later this year. We have now got 5 bids into that. There's still a lot of work going on internally, but what I am pleased to be able to tell you is, as of today, in particular thanks to Turner & Townsend, one of the bids has been approved. So that is has been written by a group of young people who have been drawn from a business champion program, and those young professionals have co-written the bid, and that bid has been selected by the Italian government to feature in the run-up to the Youth COP Summit. We've got a number of other bids in, all of which are progressing well, and hopefully we should have some more good news to share shortly. As Hannah's mentioned, if you'd like to get involved in the programme, if you're not a current partner or business champion and want to become one, please do get in touch with us. We will certainly welcome hearing from you. And that's probably all I wanted to say on the comms moment. So back to you, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Stuart and Hannah. I just wondered if I could bring Hannah back in there as well. Maybe both of you answer questions on this, but obviously you've set out these initial targets, and I understand Andy Mitchell said, you know, it's subject to iteration and change and see whether they're the right targets. But at this stage, what process have you gone through to kind of ensure that though the measures will get you to net zero, if you see what I mean? So that have you gone through any sort of verification process, I suppose, at this initial stage?
Yeah, so the premise for ConstructZero is around being able to say we are taking enough action on the biggest things that the sector can influence. So it's not to say every single action that every single business needs to take is covered in our ConstructZero programme. What we are looking at is, can we hand on heart as a sector say we are, you know, doing everything we can on the really big items that are going to move the dial. So that's where the 9 priorities come in. So we know we've got the right 9 priorities because we based those on the Committee on Climate Change's carbon budget. So that we did the sort of analytical work up front earlier in the year to say, what are the 9 thematic areas where we know we can have the most impact as a construction sector on the, you know, the UK's carbon emissions as a whole. So that's the sort of cornerstone of it, really. From then, what we've been able to build out is where we've got existing industry commitments, where we've got government policy or regulatory change that is going to move us on those particular thematic areas. So that's where we've got the headline commitments from. So an example of that would be, we know that we've got the Future Home Standard and the Future Building Standard coming in. So we've been able to build those into the framework to say, actually, we know from 2025 that we are going to be building to very different standards. So actually our role as an industry is to get ready for that. You know, we're well aware of that, we're getting ready, and here are some measures that show how we're getting ready for that switch. So that's the sort of top-down view. What we will be doing, and this sort of touches on what Andy was saying around the evolution, is clearly there are some areas where we are waiting for government policy. So the heat and building strategy is an example of that. So that'll give us a bit more certainty about what some of the potential solutions might be to low carbon heating. And when we get those, we need to then obviously build some of that into the framework, because as government gives us confidence, that sort of, if you like, triggers some more actions and more activity for industry to get ready and to start implementing it. So that's how we're going to iterate it. We're also very keen to hear things from industry side in terms of where we have set, perhaps a particular level of ambition. There may well be things happening which will raise that level of ambition, actually. So that is where we're particularly keen to hear from industry. If you think that we should be doing better and we could be doing better, and you've got something that we could, if you like, replace one of our metrics of measurement with, then absolutely please do get in touch, because we're really keen to keep this as live and as active as possible.
Great. Well, listen, we're getting lots of questions in, one of which overlaps with one that I did kind of have lined up for you guys, which was just in terms of, this is the last one before we go to the business champions, but just really quickly, in terms of, you talked about the consultation, how much actually changed from your version 0 to version 1 during the consultation? did you get many concerns coming through in the feedback?
No, there was a lot. There was a lot that changed, and actually a lot that was really constructive, because we had, when we created version 0, we based it on what we could see across the sector, but we're such a massive and diverse sector that, it was like looking through a keyhole into a room. So actually we got a whole avalanche of really good stuff coming back through. And I think there is a point around the maturity of some of the things that were coming back, because clearly net zero is quite fast moving. So we got plenty of stuff back that allowed us to embed that, things that were well underway already, and that's now in version 1. We also got quite a lot of stuff back that was absolutely sort of on target, but still quite aspirational. And so what we're going to see, I think, is some of that over the next 6 months, 12 months, start to make its way into the framework when it becomes a little bit more widely understood. There's more consensus around particular areas of activity, particular metrics of measurement. So there was a combination of things, but it did change significantly. And I think that's why we're anticipating that there will be further iterations, because we really want to be measuring the very cutting edge, if you like, of what we're doing as an industry.
Absolutely. And just finally, I know you said we're going to send round the slides to everybody on the call, but for anyone who wants to know, is there a particular part on the CLC website where you'll find it? Do you have a sort of ConstructZero part of the CLC website, or is it just as soon as you get there?
It's on the main page of the CLC website, and there's a particular button sort of halfway down that says ConstructZero, so it's all there.
Wonderful. So people can head that way. Well, I'm very pleased to see lots of questions are coming in. Keep them coming. For now, we'll say goodbye to Hannah and Stuart, and we'll go over to our business champions. Unfortunately, the first one I had on my list was Richard Batley from Saint-Gobain, but he can't make it, unfortunately, for technical reasons. But so we will go straight over to Mark Crouch at Mott MacDonald. Mark, can you join us with your webcam?
I'm afraid not. I've been hit by the dreaded technical issues, so.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, well, if you're able to just do audio, and I'll hand it over to you for now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm obviously very disappointed that no one will get to see our lovely Brighton office, and the fact that I'm wearing a nice iron shirt and suit today. So you'll just have to imagine that. But yeah, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm the carbon management lead here at Mott MacDonald, and I think we're really excited as an organisation to support this initiative and to be a business champion. And I'd just like to spend a few minutes really talking about why we decided to join this initiative, before diving into which are some of the kind of the key priorities of the 9 that we really want to focus on. So why do we apply? I mean, really for us, this is absolutely who we are as an organisation. Addressing climate change is fundamental to us as a business, and it's really integrated with everything we do. I personally have been working in the area of decarbonising infrastructure for most of my career, and over the last few years, it's gone from being a fairly niche thing to being at the top of everyone's agenda, which is fantastic. Having some structure around that and a framework for the industry to follow is really, really important to harness a lot of the enthusiasm. So we really welcome the launch of that framework today. So we've been working on this agenda for, well, certainly a decade or more. At MOTS, we authored the Infrastructure Carbon Review on behalf of the UK government. That was 8 years ago. And we've been running events since then every year around decarbonising infrastructure, our annual Carbon Crunch event. And I'm offering that as an example, really, because decarbonising projects is about collaboration, which is another fantastic thing with this initiative. It's not something that any value chain member can solve on their own. Everyone needs to be engaged, right through from client to designer to material suppliers, contractors, and having everyone engaged in this is really important. And that's why sharing best knowledge, moving the dial, bringing everyone along is so crucial. So what have we been doing? Starting with the Infrastructure Carbon Review, we then helped develop PAS 2080, the Carbon Management and Infrastructure Standard, a few years ago, which we were accredited to ourselves as a business, and that has been going through a bit of a refresh recently, which we're all looking forward to. And it's also great to see that standard gain a lot of traction, and the number of client engagements we've been having with across all the different sectors that we work in, to see that PAS 2080 standard really grabbing hold is fantastic. Some of the other areas that we've been working on in this space, developing net zero route maps at a sectoral level. We've been working with the water sector, the Environment Agency, Highways England, NHS, some of these real big challenging projects and sectors to decarbonise, to help map out and provide solutions and direction of travel so that everyone else that works and collaborates in those sectors knows which direction that they're working on. So that's a little bit about why we're doing it. And of course, in this year of COP26, it's such a great time to kind of harness all the enthusiasm, to really mobilize and engage with all the stakeholders in as positive a way as we can. We're engaged at COP itself. We're also involved in the Sustainable Innovation Forum, and net zero infrastructure is one of the themes that we're focusing on around our whole COP26 campaign. I should now move on to the priorities themselves. So across the 9 priorities for a global business like us, every one of those is absolutely relevant for us. I should also give a nod to we do have a design and build and contracting arm with Mott MacDonald Bentley that will be working on a lot of the kind of the end of the design cycle and the end of the construction cycle, the on-site kind of measures that can be made in the construction industry. But I suppose the one that I would really highlight as being most relevant for us as an organisation is number 8, being world leaders in designing out carbon. It was there in the Infrastructure Carbon Review, and it's there in PAS 2080. The greatest opportunities for saving carbon are right there at the upfront stage. Before you get into the detailed design, actually asking yourself, what are we gonna, what infrastructure do we need, and what purpose is it there to serve? So we've been working a lot in that area. We've been working and collaborating with our value chain partners on that, both within the UK and internationally. So that's certainly one that I'd really highlight. The other one is around implementing carbon measurements, because as we all know, you can't manage what you can't measure. We've got digital tools, as I'm sure many others have, but I think getting that digital aspect of carbon management right is so fundamental to actually making success and getting that streamlined, moved from being something that people like me do to something that actually becomes integrated into all costing of projects, all designing of all projects. And certainly we've been working on our own solutions, but working with clients on that as well. Couple of others I'd highlight around kind of low carbon heat. Collaboration, as I've mentioned, is really critical to achieving success here. We've helped form what we've called a net zero infrastructure industry coalition here in the UK with a bunch of other partners across the value chain. One of the areas that we looked at was really around decarbonising heat. That's such a critical area to decarbonise, alongside transport as well. And then, yeah, finally, championing developments with kind of zero emission vehicles and decarbonising transport. Couple of kind of contributions we made here around Highways England, their net zero route map that was published yesterday, and of course the DFT decarbonisation strategy as well. So I've probably used up my 5 minutes there, but I think to just re-emphasise, this is an absolutely brilliant initiative that we're very proud of supporting and being a part of, and really looking forward to engaging with it further as it develops, and looking forward to the Q&A and panel discussion today as well.
Thank you so much, Mark. Sorry we couldn't see your face, but I think it is more important to be able to hear you. So definitely questions that keep on coming in. So do keep posting questions. We're going to move now on to Kath Fontana at Mighty, and I'm going to turn my webcam on as soon as she is able to join us. There you go, Kath, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So yes, I'm Managing Director of Mighty Projects, part of the Mighty Group, and a little bit about Mighty. You may not think of us as a construction business, but what we are is the UK's largest facilities management business with over 70,000 staff in the UK, and we look after millions and millions of square feet of operational buildings. But we also have a projects business that undertakes retrofit and new building services installations for a number of clients across civil government, defence, nuclear, and also the private sector. And our business is about £500 million. So we are intensely involved in buildings, and in particular in the energy use of buildings, as you would expect. So we are really, really pleased to be here today in order to kind of support this. It's very important to us as a business. So as a responsible business that embraces the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, we really are trying to unlock social value to create positive economic, environmental and social impacts. We have a really bold ambition to make sure that we play our part in delivering the exceptional every day for our customers, our people, and the communities we support and the world we live in. And we as a business truly believe that climate emergency is a problem that we all need to take responsibility for. If we've got any chance of solving it, then all businesses need to take bold action now. And Plan Zero is Mighty's ambitious 2025 commitment to lead the way, not just within our own industry, but also across wider UK business to make those changes. We put the expertise in our business into action. So we are now stepping up the rollout of electric vehicle fleet, which is really important to us because we have one of the largest fleets in the UK. So effectively for us, that is a really important part. So number one, transport, accelerating the shift of our workforce into zero emission vehicles is crucial. A significant amount of our own carbon comes from our vehicles. And we are exceeding all our targets in that area. I hope you can see me okay. I'm having a few technical problems. I can't see the screen anymore. Are you okay? Can you hear me okay?
Your sound is absolutely fine, and we can see you as well.
Sorry, I can't see you now. So if you just bear with me a moment. It's great to have that. I think it's the weather, to be honest. All the servers in the whole of the UK are probably overheating. So we have a programme called Plan Zero, and Plan Zero is Mighty's promise to protect the planet and leave it in a better condition than we found it. And over the next 5 years and beyond, this will simply become how Mighty does business, and we hope many more companies will join us on this journey. So in terms of our credentials, the ESG ratings agency, CDP, awarded Mighty an A- climate change score in 2020, a massive improvement from the C we got in 2019. This makes us only one of 65 UK businesses to be rated in the leadership category. In Jan 21, our accreditation from Sustainalytics improved to 9.8, which is the lowest risk category and puts us in the top 2% of the most sustainable businesses in the world. And we have the #1 global ranking in the support services industry. We received a gold award from the Sustainable Facilities Management Index, and we are the member of the invitation-only Aldersgate Group, one of the UK's leading sustainability organisations. I'm very proud as well that we're named as one of Europe's climate leaders 2021 by the Financial Times. So the key things that we want to focus on as an organisation, as I said, is eliminating carbon emissions from power and transport. Also energy performance and low carbon heat solutions, which is one of the goals we have here, and also energy performance of new and existing buildings. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're progressing there. So if we talk about carbon emissions from our transport, our emissions have been reduced by an amazing 36% market-based target compared to our baseline year. And that has mainly been achieved by our EV transition and decarbonising our own heating systems. So we have now transitioned in our own business to 100% renewable energy. We are doubling energy productivity over the next 25 years, which we will achieve by 2025 as part of Plan Zero. And we recently exceeded our target of transitioning to 20% EV cars and small vans by the end of 2021. End of 2020, 3 months early, and we now have 1,234 electric vehicles on the road. I think the only thing that's holding us up at the moment is the lead-in time for electric vehicles. If I talk about decarbonisation, which has been a really big part of decarbonising our own estate, we have identified annual carbon emissions of 475,328 kilograms, or 44% of our baseline emissions figure. So we believe that we have to do it in our own business first before we're able to support our clients. But we also work very closely with our clients. So we were the first company in the UK to introduce end user power purchase agreements to the market in 2008. And we assist our energy intensive organisations and our clients in purchasing green power. Our experience working with every part of the electricity supply chain enables a market-leading exposure, experience and understanding. Our project teams include researchers, allowing us to provide energy policy expertise, and we continue to support large organisations in their buying power through power purchase agreements. Last year alone, we developed strategies to reduce over 375,000 tonnes of carbon. We also offer technical solutions to reduce carbon for our clients, including low carbon heating and cooling, LED lighting, EV charging infrastructure, solar PV and battery storage. And sometimes though, the upfront costs of these make it difficult to get innovation off the ground. And so we are also now offering our clients decarbonisation as a service, a very simple solution where users only pay for decarbonisation service with an upfront investment replaced by a regular service fee. So we're really trying to help our clients get over that hurdle of the payback period. Although I am pleased to say that that payback period is less of a conversation now, and I think that's a really important move. Because our research shows that nearly half of businesses working towards net zero do not actually have a plan in place to reach their targets. And when we ask them why not, it's clear that a lot really do need a helping hand. Nearly 20% of our clients say they don't have the time or the resources to create a plan, and 15% do not have expertise in-house. Surprisingly, over 1 in 5 hadn't thought about it yet. So many organisations have yet to design a plan. And this is where I think the construction industry as a whole can really step forward and help our customers and help the organisations we work with really develop those plans. We have all the skills and talents and expertise in this industry, and we need to lean into our clients to support them with this. So we've developed a Plan Zero 5-step playbook to support customers in the development of their own decarbonisation strategies, which combines our project and property knowledge, as well as our extensive carbon and energy reduction capabilities to design bespoke carbon reduction strategies. As an industry, though, it is really clear to me that we need to invest in training and skills and the supply chain to really deliver on decarbonisation promises. We really need to drive a rapid ramp up of capability across the whole industry. So that's really where Mighty's coming from, and I'm really pleased to be here as a facilities manager, but also as someone running a projects business. I think it's really critical that facilities management and operational side of the industry is absolutely involved in this as well. So we are really looking forward to help drive this going forward into the future, and excited to see how the targets progress. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kath. I just wanted to pick up on one thing, just making sure I understood what you said. You mentioned a target for electric vehicles, but said that could be subject to change just because of lead-in times for electric vehicles.
Yeah, I don't think it will be subject to change. Our target will be our target, but for sure, like everybody, I think at the moment we are we're not struggling, but there's definitely a long lead-in for electric vehicles at the moment. And so I'm really hoping that the supply chain around electric vehicles ramps up pretty quickly. I think we're seeing evidence of that. But you know, when you're waiting 6 months for an electric vehicle, as we are at the moment, even with our buying power of the fleet, then that's something I think the kind of the car industry needs to focus on. And I think it's quite interesting that all these industries are interrelated. There has to be a multi-industry approach to this, I think, definitely.
No, that's really interesting, because we just looking through the questions that are coming in, and just say, I think one of our listeners is saying that, you know, concerned about how do you actually make those reductions in terms of diesel vehicles, in terms of plant, you know, that I guess there's a theme coming through in some of the questions, which is this is great, but it's not everything is in place to actually do it yet.
No, it isn't, and I'm really hoping that actually I do see signs of the whole of UK business and industry getting onto this, which is really crucial, I think, because you know, construction can't decarbonise its vehicles if the automotive industry isn't producing enough electric vehicles, if the EV charging infrastructure in the UK isn't necessarily where it needs to be at the moment. That will impact our productivity. So, you know, I think there's a lot of trade-offs here, and I think it's really important that there is, as I said, a multi-industry approach.
Lovely. Thanks, Kath, for picking up on that. Right, we are going to move to our last business champion, which is John Logan from McLaughlin and Harvey. So, John, are you able to turn on your webcam? Lovely. And Kath and I will turn off ours. Over to you, John.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join today's event. I'm John Logan. I'm Group Environmental Manager for McLaughlin and Harvey, who are a major construction and civil engineering contractor operating across the UK and Ireland. We applied to become business champions as the ConstructZero initiative is the perfect platform for both collaboration and challenge. One issue we face as an industry is that the net zero agenda may only be attributed to being in the domain or responsibility of Tier 1 contractors. We need to avoid the dilution of responsibility based on status, as this presents a real risk to the potential to drive change which our industry has. We have a responsibility to smaller contractors and our collective supply chains to ensure that the issue of climate change becomes mainstream business thinking and practice. This needs to be overcome through collective and integrated thinking, partnership approaches, and even challenging clients on what their climate aspirations and actions are. If we are to drive change and make a significant difference, we must challenge convention. Too many times in the past, there's been issues in the construction industry where we've done it this way for 40 years. Well, if we continue on the climate journey as we are at present, then we don't have another 40 years. So I think it's important that we pull together in the collective aspiration at the moment. So how do we make progress on net zero? Well, it's not just important as a business. It's imperative for the people who are the lifeblood of all our businesses, the families, and the families' future generations. Climate change mitigation can no longer be classed as being purely a business objective. It's a responsibility and a moral duty which we have as individuals and businesses. McLaughlin and Harvey launched their net zero by 2030 strategy early this year, and it sets out a timetable for delivery of our ambitions. And it's not just a headline commitment. It's actually worded and formed as a delivery method statement, and it's fully transparent, and it's available through the website. So I would welcome any comments if you choose to download it and have a read at it. One of the key commitments we made was to train and engage our staff and our supply chain, and we did that in partnership with the Carbon Literacy Trust, and we've developed a carbon literacy training programme in conjunction with another 3 contractors. So we have already started the sort of mainstream collaboration ideology behind the strategy that we've put in place, and it's working very well so far. In terms of the initiative, all of the 9 priorities were undoubtedly attractive to us. However, the couple that I chose to talk about were modern methods of construction, which is undoubtedly a key area where we can have a direct and indirect positive impact from minimising the amount of waste that we produce on site, because for the last decade we've done nothing about that as an industry, never mind what we're doing net zero. And spin-off benefits from that include, protecting local air quality, etc. But as well as being a driver for true circularity, modern methods of construction can also be an enabler for modern methods of deconstruction and helping to drive that circular economy aspect as we go forward. And secondly, our focus as an industry at present always seems to be about future-proofing, energy performance, circularity of materials, but it's left us slightly blinkered in that retrofit always seems to be related to bolting photovoltaics on any available surface. Social housing stock is a major source of wasted heat and energy, and many of our citizens live in fuel poverty. And I think we need to think differently in terms of how retrofit is approached, and more importantly, how it's funded. And I think we need to use that as a platform in this country for driving inward green investment, which will then in turn create new trade jobs and hopefully in the long term alleviate people living in fuel poverty. So I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to represent the business as being part of this unique collaboration. And I look forward to helping you drive the initiatives going forward, including the reporting and the development of the framework. So thank you again for the opportunity.
So I'm not sure, Chloe might be having, Chloe, are you there? Chloe has just gone offline. If you'll just bear with us for 2 seconds. Sorry, John. Thank you so much. So let me just try and quickly get hold of her. I think if everyone's able to come back online, and if you'll turn on your webcams, I think we're just about to begin the Q&A sessions. So I will just, as I say, I'll just quickly try and get hold of Chloe. And bear with us 2 seconds. Sorry about this, everybody. We do have a huge amount of questions that have come in. I'm just a bit worried that I don't want to be the one to ask them, just in case.
It's fine, Ruth. I'm happy to, if you can get them through on the chat, I'm happy to start to field those to our panelists.
Do that, right. In which case, let me just go through from the beginning. We've had a few, we actually had a few to, where are we? Get these through. Sorry, I'm just, there we go. I think that's Chloe just come back. I might just leave that to Chloe. Chloe, can you hear us? Chloe, is that better?
Hello.
There we go, you're back on.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. You might have heard me swearing in the background. I was trying to get back on. I'm sorry, everybody. I hope there wasn't a huge delay there, but I was just in the middle of saying thank you to John when I realised I wasn't connected. Right. If we're okay now, we might go to the Q&A session. I know we've had lots of questions lined up. I might pull some of them together and put them directly to Andrew Griffiths, because I know people were keen to question him on a couple of points. First one came in from Chris, which was around a comment I think you made, Andrew, on new businesses entering the retrofit market, and that obviously interested him. He was interested to know what your thoughts are on the current capabilities within that market and if you see opportunities there.
Yeah, thank you. Look, whether this is right or wrong, what I had in mind is clearly over time we have a huge legacy estate. There will be new technologies, not all of which are ready for prime time, but which every day people are looking at bringing to market. A lot of my professional experience was a company called Sky, and Sky grew on the back of taking an analog technology to a digital technology. And it started as a very small business, as an SME, operating in a fairly narrow domain. And because of that generational shift in technology that it didn't particularly invent, but it turned into a brilliant consumer experience. It got right, turning up on time, doing a clean job, having access to the best off-the-shelf technology, and doing it all in a very consumer-friendly way. So I accept, this is a big change, and I don't say that as a glib example. A number of things have to fall in place, including government has to set a clear framework and the trajectory, and hopefully bring forward some financial support as well. But that's very much what I had in mind, is that whenever there's a change, it does offer great opportunities for new businesses to grow and establish themselves, as well as for existing businesses to make that change as well.
Sorry, classic error. Thank you very much for that. I know a couple of other questions for you, Andrew, were around, I sense a slight frustration from some of the listeners around this all being voluntary and sort of guidance. And there's a sense, I think, from some of the listeners that could we not just solve some of this by a bit more regulation, putting stuff into building regulations, regulating for things like building performance, and actually really getting quite tough on the sector. I don't know what your thoughts are around that. Andrew, I might go first and then maybe Andy.
Well, I saw Hannah nodding, and Hannah's the boss in this domain, so I shall take back my orders. Look, I think there's absolutely a role for that. The trick, if you like, is striking the right balance. And if we take a different domain about automotive, it's actually about 11 years since the first viable electric commercial vehicle. It's only now that there is a clear mandated, regulatory prohibition, if you like, and even that applies a little bit further forward to 2030, when we move to ending pure combustion engine vehicles. So I don't think that's a bad example of, we need to see progress. We need to see technologies be ready at scale. We're obviously going to come forward with the new home standard in due course, and it's right that industry consult about where that balance lies, and then we need to act. So I'm a big fan of what I call, in the most positive way, because let's face it, it's not an industry that lacks for government regulation. It's not something people grab me by the arm in the street and say we'd like even more red tape. But what I call the back of the peloton, where you've established a direction of travel so everyone knows where they're going, where in a fragmented industry it would help everyone compete on a level playing field by knowing where they stand, and then moving the standards up over time to the new clean world that we want to get into. So I think you will see more chapters in that instalment. Automotive is not a bad analogy, and when we come forward with the new home standards, that'll be one part of that.
Okay. Oh, and while I've got you, just as sort of government representative, I do know that there is some frustration in the industry about delays to things like the heat and building strategy, the overall net zero strategy that covers all business sectors. Can you reassure listeners on this call that is all coming, and it's just
it's definitely all coming, and we're arguing about weeks, rather than years. Look, of course, one person's delay is another person's chance to get it right, or to have a proper open consultation. So it is. I'm not a representative of the government entirely, so I can speak a bit more freely. But the reality is, the single most important thing, a lot of this stuff is getting it right for a generation. We don't want false starts. We don't want misstarts. And if that means something does take a few more weeks, it hasn't, for example, stopped the performance framework being brought forward. That itself has provision for things to be shaded in a bit more detail over time. And in respect of what you were talking about, we are just talking about weeks, I think now. So
it should be rumours it will be September. Is that what everybody's sort of still hoping for?
Let's hope. I mean, I literally one doesn't entirely know, but let's hope. That would fall within my weeks, wouldn't it? It's never too early to start building the future. There are a great many things people can do anyway. We're in a world where consumers are starting to recognise, positive behaviours, starting to reflect that when they're looking. Lenders on properties or projects are starting to look to sustainability as well. So although these are, I recognise, really important chapters in the book that need to be written and published and finalised, it shouldn't stop anyone on this call thinking about the sustainability actions that they themselves can take.
Absolutely right. I might move over to Andy there. You're nodding.
Yes, no, I agree with Andrew. I think this is a case of there are many things that we can do because they're the right things to do, and the capability, technology is available now. But there inevitably will be things that we need to be saying to government. This is not going to happen. We're not going to have a level playing field that people can actually work in, competitively, unless we have some legislation, and that's that's clear. And as Andrew says, there are precedents in terms of production of electric vehicles and that kind of stuff. So, but I think this is, the more we as the construction industry can demonstrate to government that we've got a handle on this and we've got a very clear plan, and let's be honest, the measures we've got will, as we work through and understand, well, how hard or how easy some of these things are, and find out therefore whether we're being ambitious but realistic, the more progress we make on this, the more credibility we're going to have when we go back to government to say, right, now the way we see it, this, and this. But we'll be doing that from a position of greater knowledge and greater confidence than, let's be honest, we are at the moment. So this is all part of the journey, and that's why today is such an important step.
Absolutely. Okay, Hannah, I feel you want to come in there.
No, I don't have much to add over and above that. I think it is a case of actually, it's not for us to sit and wait for government to deliver all of this. This is a case of actually industry leadership, and there is a huge amount that we can do, and we can do as a collective. And we are so diverse that it's going to take us some time to work through that and what works for, a consensus of the industry, shall we say, that we've got plenty to be getting on with in the meantime. So yes, we will in time, as Andy says, build up our case to more, strongly engage with government around where there are, particular pinch points. But actually, let's not lose sight of all the stuff we can just be getting on with, which is at least 80% of the stuff in the performance framework.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else wants to come in on that, but I might move on to another question. Oh, sorry, David.
Yes, thanks, Chloe. Yeah, I just really wanted to add a little bit from the point of view of the owners and investors and operators, developers of real estate. That's really my my remit on the advisory board, to reinforce what Andrew was just saying, actually, about when do you need to regulate, when do you need to provide a carrot, and when do you need to provide a stick in order to achieve the sorts of dramatic change that we've been talking about. And my objective is to bring the rest of the sort of the food chain outside and beyond construction, everybody who's involved in the built environment, all the people who are investing in infrastructure, in buildings, in the things that are going to be built and retrofitted over many years, the banks who are financing it, the pension funds and the investors who own these assets long term, who are absolutely determined to ensure that they are sustainable in every way, and who will end up owning these assets in 2030 and 2040, at the time when it's so critical. And if we can all come behind a common set of standards and a common set of metrics, which we all understand what they mean, and we can report them at investment committee level, at board level, and into every single element of the construction projects that we're doing, then I think we'll have a language that we all get, and we'll all aspire to achieve that. And then, as Andrew says, he can come along and with I think it's the Parson's nose, the end of the peloton, who sweeps up all the the elements that need to be regulated on, because the industry has already set its own high standards, and that's what my objective, being part of this, is to spread it broadly so that there's a common approach across everything in order to be able to make it as effective as possible.
Thank you, David. It's great to get that sort of developer's perspective as well. We've got a question coming in, I suppose, on the cost side of things, and saying, has there been any analysis done at sort of CLC level about the sort of cost of implementing some of these measures on a project level? Hannah, I don't know if that's a question I should direct at you. Sorry to pick on you.
Thank you. That was a really hard question. I knew it was coming my way. So, I mean, I think part of what we've started to see actually is from projects wanting to understand how to specify and procure things that are, more aligned to a net zero future. So for us, it's not really for the CLC to sit there and say, well, actually, this is going to cost more, because you could end up, I think, almost becoming very academic in that exercise, because in some areas you would be designing out carbon, and we know that if you're designing out carbon, it's going to be cheaper. We also know in other areas where you're retrofitting existing stock, it's probably not going to pay for itself through offsetting against the energy bills. So if you like, this is a little bit of a seesaw here. So rather than us try and take that macro view on, overall it's going to cost more, I think really the conversation we need to be having is, who derives value from this, and are they willing to pay for that value? And certainly what we're seeing as far as the clients and as David has alluded to, the investors are interested in, actually I'm not overly concerned that the finance will flow, she says boldly, because if you've got better ESG credentials, you will get a lower interest rate, whether that's on your social housing stock, whether that's on your development. If you are a government infrastructure client, at the moment, you're going to have to start to broaden out your definition of value, whether that's social value or in this case net zero, in order to just pass the bar to actually secure some funding from the Treasury in the first place. So I think actually over time we'll start to see this baked in. That's not to say there won't need to be certain areas, and we know retrofit is one, where we may need a sort of, some sort of tax incentive or cash injection to help level the playing field, but it's certainly not something where we can look across the, the full suite of the 9 priorities and say all of those are going to require, direct government grant, for example.
Okay, that's really helpful across sort of sector level. I might just go to the different business champions and just see whether cost has been a conversation that you have at a company level about, we want to meet these targets. Are we factoring cost, or do we see it as investment? Is it just something that we have to do and work out the costing later? Kath, I might come to you first on that.
Thank you very much. So I think from our own business perspective, what we are absolutely driven by is doing the right thing. So we have made some really bold statements about our targets. We're holding ourselves to account and we're actioning those targets. And no doubt some of those things may cost us a little bit more in the short term as an organisation, but clearly our board believe it is worth that investment if there is additional cost for our business. However, what I see amongst our client base is a huge demand for working with suppliers and contractors that are socially responsible, that are taking climate change seriously and can help them. So the sorts of organisations that we work with and for absolutely demanding this of us now. So for us, it's part of good, responsible business. It's not optional. And if there is an additional cost, then we believe that will be a short-term thing, not a long-term thing for us, and that actually it is in the long-term interests of our business to adopt a net zero approach. So I don't see there being a huge additional cost, but if there is, there is a huge cost to the whole of society of not doing it, which cannot be denied now, I think. In terms of our some of our customers. I think there are a few still that perhaps, and I'm sure everybody will nod in agreement, that value engineer out sustainable solutions if they feel they're a little more expensive than they would want. But I definitely see that those customers are now in the minority rather than the majority. I was very interested in, I think it was John's comment about retrofit and making sure that actually we apply this to the whole stock. I personally think that that is absolutely critical, and not just housing, but retrofit of commercial buildings too. It's really, really important that we're able to work on that existing stock. And many of colleagues on the call won't thank me for this, but new build in itself is a huge carbon hungry process. And so the more that we can adapt and reuse buildings, really, I think eventually we will need to get to that point. But right now, I think the cost, if there is a cost, it's not anywhere near enough to put us off doing what we think is right as a business.
That's good to hear. I'm going to move to John on that.
Thanks, Chloe. There's a number of points there, and I fully agree with Kath. You know, we've looked at things on a very basic project level, and at the moment, things like biofuels are about 20–25% more expensive than conventional diesel. However, that equilibrium will shift next year with the increase in levy on conventional fuels. We didn't fully cost our new net zero strategy, but we do know that it's going to cost maybe £200–250,000 of expenditure over probably the first 5 years of delivery. But like Kath said, that's a commitment that we made, and we're not looking for any kudos from that. We're doing the right thing as a responsible family-owned business. I think the key thing, and touching on what Hannah said, and offset is a word that I've never really liked because it's almost as if it dismisses the issue. But part of our strategy has seen us become certified to ISO 14064 for international greenhouse gas measurement and reporting. There is a real dearth of certified offset projects in this country. As part of our offset strategy, we need to, we don't fully offset, I've got to add that, we're proportionally offsetting against a direct emissions reduction. So, but I have to demonstrate that any offset projects we do invest in comply to either gold standard or VCS to have it count against that footprint measurement. And there are absolutely no offset projects in this country that we can invest in. And I think the challenge for the government, and I would lay it down as a challenge, is to create a framework that creates certified reinvestment in social housing stock or existing stock, as Kath said, that allows the retrofit of not PV panels but of double glazing, efficient boilers or ground source heat pumps, insulation, and that would improve the energy and heat loss from existing social housing stock, but give people who are maybe on low incomes the chance to keep their families warm, which, well, due respect, when you're operating at that level, is more of a responsibility than climate change. So there are millions of pounds of offset funding which leaves this country each year and goes to Chile and Paraguay and India, and I think we need to be more introvertive in our own offset strategies before we start looking at it.
Thanks, John. I want to bring in Mark. I don't want to forget him because his webcam isn't working. Mark, are you still with us?
I am, yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was going to chip in a couple of times, but it's not easy when I know you can't see me. Well, I mean, I'd agree with what all of the panelists have said up to this point. To try and just pick up a couple of new angles on it. I mean, at a macro level, we know from what the Committee on Climate Change have shown that actually, going all the way back to the Stern review, it's going to be a lot cheaper to address this properly and better at a societal level than if we don't. So, at the cost to society level, clearly, we need to do this. We need to get better at kind of pricing in the externalities of carbon. There hasn't been a very good way of really recognizing actually the wider externalities of carbon and other sustainability indicators, but I think that's definitely coming. Scope 3 emissions and embodied carbon has been kind of largely ignored by policy to date, but certainly that's changing. And I think a much greater emphasis on the capital carbon of infrastructure schemes, actually getting Scope 3 tackled right, will again, tip the balance of the economics of doing a lot of these things. And then, yeah, for a company like Mott MacDonald, we certainly see this as an investment. It's the way that the market is moving. We are investing a lot in what we do in terms of our service offerings, training our people, our tools, collaborating with clients and wider industry. And that's because for companies that don't, they're going to get left behind, really. So whilst it might feel like there's some short-term cost, it's really that's not the way that we see it. The final thing I'll just throw in that was kind of referenced is actually the idea that reducing carbon increases cost is, we've been trying to bust that myth for many years. Actually, if you get this right at the early stages of projects, you'll save money. It actually, cost and carbon often go hand in hand. So I think that's just the point I'd like to end on.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. Look, we're coming to the final couple of minutes. I just want to give a last word to probably Andy and Andrew, just on where you see things going. I know some of the comments I literally couldn't read out all of the questions because there were so many, but quite a few of them were this is great to have, great ambitions, but some of it was around we're just at the very start of the net zero journey, got a huge way to go. So I suppose what would your message be to the industry, given that it's an enormous fragmented industry? Some areas are really way ahead, others are really lagging behind. So I guess for Andy and Andrew, what would your final message for the industry be on the day that you're launching this framework?
Which
Andrew,
one?
do you want to start or finish?
Yeah, look, every journey starts with a single step, right? So we've got to start somewhere, and this is a great start. So let's all just resolve to build on that and move forward. Secondly, we're all each other's keeper on climate. It's not a competitive domain. So if you find a good idea, if you found a new supplier, a new product, a new way of doing something, please share. Please tell people about it, so that we can all as an industry get up that learning curve as quickly as possible. And finally, look, there is nothing more important, more important to your customers, to your suppliers. If you're selling to government, this is going to be baked into government procurement. Every local authority has declared a climate emergency. Your kids are going to ask you, your grandchildren are going to ask you. So get with this, and engage and take action. So those would be my final words.
Thank you. And Andy, you get the actual final word then.
Yeah, guess what's just happened?
Oh no! Oh, fire alarm! Oh my! Okay.
It's 3 o'clock. It's the drill. So look, two things. I have not yet heard a business champion or anyone else say that what we're doing we're not sharing. We see the opposite from everyone we've heard today, that this isn't a competition. This is a very serious journey and a role that this industry has, and actually that brings me to a point that perhaps is the right one to end on, which is we mustn't forget the people. There is a massive skills thing, everything from John talking about basic carbon literacy, and which probably all of us need to get a common language and a common vocabulary, to all the detailed engineering and technical capabilities that we're going to need if we're dealing with heat pumps or hydrogen boilers or whatever it is we're dealing with in the future that we're not now. So we've got a huge challenge to, I think, re-educate a whole industry. But look at it externally. So you're a youngster and you're reasonably numerate and literate, and what do you want to do? Well, you want to change the world. Or what industry am I going to work in? Well, I want to work in the industry that probably can make more difference to the world than any other industry. And And that's not how we've sold ourselves. It's not how we've seen ourselves. But imagine that. And imagine what an exciting proposition we can offer, what an exciting career we can offer a whole new generation of people. So the fact that we are getting our act together, the fact that we're being coherent, the fact that we're being visible and taken seriously has got so many positives to it. And sure, it's going to be a bumpy journey, and we know that, but the prize has to be had, and the prize is there. And I think there's a really, really exciting future for people that aren't even in this industry yet.
Thank you so much, Andy, for ending on a really positive note. There's obviously loads of detail behind this framework. There's loads of detail that you can find on the CLC's website about becoming a business champion. So I do urge all of our listeners to go on there. Thank you so much for all of your questions. I couldn't read them out all individually, but I will pass them all on to the CLC because I know they want your feedback. And I would just like to thank all of the speakers today. Apologies for the technical interruption. I hope that didn't disturb things for too long. And hopefully we can do this again soon, because it feels like there's lots of updates to be had. And I'm definitely very interested in October to find out more about the results that you get through when you sort of collate all of this data and look at how everyone's doing against the milestones. So thanks again, everybody, and hope it was useful, and come again soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Chloe.